Also, I'm really excited, Zander, for whatever you're doing next. And you can always call on me if anything I can do to like amplify your message, shout out the
All right.
Kickstarter, do a pin up, whatever. I am there for it.
Nice. Well, yeah. Feelings mutual, but I know that it's a little bit more one way than the other, or more useful one way.
I know you don't admire me at all, but I mean.
Welcome to the Comics Cube, everyone. I'm super excited about this because we are with one of my favorite creative duos, Ha and Zander Cannon. So welcome, guys, back to the Comics Cube.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, or as we're known on Saturday Night Live, the Ambiguously creative duo.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a blast from the past.
No kidding.
How did you guys meet?
Comic shop signing.
Yeah, at Vaughn's in where was that?
Lafayette, Indiana, or West Lafayette,
near Purdue, wherever that is.
When was this? Yeah,
that was in 98 or 9.
Around then, yeah.
98 must have been, or even 9. It might even been 97. It was a long time ago.
It was pretty early into the first run of Replacement God.
Oh wow, was it that early? Yeah, so it was probably 97. So yeah, I mean, we had, that was the first like signing that I'd been sort of. They said, come to this distant place and sign at the store, and I thought, oh yeah, sure. And so, and Gene had super long hair and a ponytail, which I think was it's like that's how I pictured you in my mind for so long, and then I was like, and then I see you and you're like, oh yes, you have a much more sensible haircut now. But yeah, you just done some Justice League stuff, I think, right?
Probably about that. Yeah. And at some point I realized that later in the 90s, I realized every other man in the room with a Steven Skull haircut would look like a douchebag, and then I thought about myself and I was like, I probably look like them too. I probably can't pull off this look any better than them.
Well, they weren't as handsome as you, Gene. They didn't have that sculpted jaw.
I was also pudgier then, so I looked a little more like Steven Seagal that way than I do now.
Were you guys familiar with each other's work? You'd watch that movie?
I totally would. Gene beating up a bunch of guys like Steven Seagal, yeah, that'd be great.
Gene Ha played by Steven Seagal.
Oh no, that I wouldn't watch. Steven Seagal played by Gene Ha. Now we're talking.
I'd kind of want to watch either one of those. That would be amazing.
And do a compare and contrast. Were you guys familiar with each other's work? Yeah.
I was, because Gene's stuff was mainstream. I was pretty aware of it. I think I'd seen Fortunate Son, and I'd seen Octane, the Dark Horse series that he'd done with somebody. I can't remember who. But
Voldemort. I did it with Voldemort.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you shall not be named. But anyway, so then, but I don't know, Gene, were you familiar with Replacement God at the time?
No. Though you made a really deep impression on me. It was just like the book was fantastic. You were a very friendly person and great with the fans, but also the story. I picked up some copies and I just thought, wow, this guy's a young genius. And then later when I moved to Minneapolis, it was like, hey, I'm moving to this, or when I moved to St. Paul, I thought I'm moving to the same town as that brilliant guy. So, and you have not let me down.
Well, give me time.
Well, it's been 24 years. What's a little bit more time?
Yeah. Just keep hanging in there.
You'll fail yet.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
So go ahead.
No, more.
Oh no, I mean, it was really fun. It was a really sort of a fun. I thought it was such a fun signing, and then when Gene moved up there, it was like, oh yeah, like there was kind of a scene in Minneapolis, like there were a few comic book artists, but it was like, then when we could sort of like hang out and talk comics again, talk comics in my own town, like that was really exciting. Yeah. It was really neat to sort of it was a new dimension to being a comic artist.
Did you guys talk about working together during that signing?
Well,
I
that was Gene was working on it for a while before I was, for sure.
I don't think we talked about working together at that point. I just thought, but I think I actually had thought at that signing, well, if I ever got a chance to work with this guy, I totally would. Which is so, when the chance came up, it was like, maybe I will have a chance to work with this guy now. So
Was top 10 that chance? Or
yeah, I was overwhelmed.
Oh, so
Yeah.
I got a question for you about that, Gene, because in this special, in America's Best Comic Special, there's a story by Alan Moore and Chris Sprouse at the end, which is Timmy Turbo going into the America's Best Comics office, and it shows Neapolis as a 3-dimensional thing, and then it says that you were working on it. And the guy here who is supposed to be handling the backgrounds in the script is Emil Castañeda. Was that?
Yeah,
It's
actually,
not my code name.
Initially, I moved to Minneapolis partially in the understanding that I was going to work with a former art school classmate of mine. But then it turned out he had not been drawing, keeping up with. He told me he'd been keeping up with his drawing, but he had not been keeping up with his drawing, and he just couldn't draw the things he used to do in art school at that point, and the whole thing just fell apart. And at that point, that's when I really was like, hey, Zander's in town and he's a genius. So yes.
I hope he's a genius, because we're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Well, and that was, but Gene was sort of, he was going to be a backgrounds guy, and I was like, Gene, I even did a couple tests, and I was like, I can't ink the way you ink. I can't do anything the way that you can. But what I can do is storytelling, and and I think initially we were going to be more interconnected, where it was going to be like passing pages back and forth, but it really was like our styles didn't match. I just couldn't do it. Like Gene would draw these things, and it's like, Gene's left-handed, so I don't know if you've ever like seen him in person, but his left forearm is like Popeye. It's just rippling with muscles, like, because he grips his pen or his brush so hard. Yeah.
I'm going to say, you can see here the giant callus on my middle finger on my drawing hand, which has been there since second grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How does it even get to that part of your finger? Does it rub against the?
Hold on, got to hold in front of.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's where the callus is developed.
Okay.
No.
And then actually, a lot of my fine control is by giving the finger to the piece of paper, moving my middle finger around.
Yeah.
Large strokes, and this I learned from art school. The large strokes are done by not moving my hand at all, keeping my wrist locked, and then moving my forearm and shoulder around.
Yeah.
That's
interesting. I came and looked at this stuff, and I'm like, I can't do it. Like, even if I could do it for a minute, it would, it's like, I don't know. I was born to do funny looking cartoon guys, not, photo referenced, beautiful, Gene Ha guys.
Zander was born to do brilliant storytelling and to tell things elegantly and boldly and expressively, but not to draw the facial texture on a cowboy, on a 57-year-old cowboy. That's not really his specialty.
Right. Yeah, I'll admit it right here.
I have heard, Gene, I have heard you say that architecture comes easier to you than it does to most other artists.
Yeah, I don't actually enjoy drawing buildings, but I am really good at it. So yeah. And Alan Moore saw some of the stuff I'd done previously, like on Starman and stuff like that, and he was like, oh, this guy's good at doing buildings. I'm going to throw a lot of buildings at him. So, there we go. And he's good at crowds.
Gene, do you remember when Alan was sick, and he and he was like, and we were like, we need pages. We're done with the most recent stuff. And so he just sends you a page, like one page that was sort of like character business. And then the next page is a splash page where someone's flying over Neapolis, this crazy city.
I'm gonna try the copy top 10 here. Let's see. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, he'll look it up. But anyway, it's this unbelievable, and so Alan Moore was like, oh yeah, this will take him at least a week. I can get over this cold. And Yeah, I mean, it worked like a charm.
Yeah. Well, okay. So in a normal cityscape, I'm usually able to get away with doing a third of the top of the image or half the top of the image as just sky. And then you have skyscrapers going into it and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But Alan's decided, oh, I really need to slow down Gene Ha. So he wrote the page as, okay, it's a cityscape, but instead of looking at the city on the horizon, we're going to be floating above the city and looking down. So the whole page is full of buildings, and it's Neapolis. So it's like it's a city built on a city built on a city, floating in the, floating on the air on
That one.
buttresses and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
just
that's
it's all cityscape every inch of the page. It was just so painful.
Yeah. I like
That's
that you have the Spanish version.
yeah,
of it
you have
there.
the Spanish version too.
Better printed. It's nicer paper. The
Oh, yeah.
colors are better. It's crisper. It's a much nicer edition.
And it was all in one volume, which is nice.
Oh yeah, and even the binding on this, it's gorgeous. Yeah, the Spanish
yeah.
Spanish edition, not the Latin American Spanish edition.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if there's Latin American.
I got that. I think I got one of those, the Latin American one.
That's
Yeah.
very cool. It looks like the Absolute edition, just kind of shrunken down a bit.
Yeah. Oh, it is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, and also I can show you early on when Zander and I were experimenting working together. You can actually see the pages where like Zander would do a figure and then I would do a figure. Let me see. Like here, you can see this here. This is a page where Zander did the figures and I did the backgrounds.
Oh, it's the first
Oh,
one.
sure.
Oh, I see it.
that-
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I see that.
and Gene, like you were drawing really small, I think, with on smaller originals to sort of save time.
Yeah,
And
legal
yeah.
size.
Was it
You were
legal?
drawing
Yeah,
on
okay.
legal size paper?
Yeah. It
Yeah,
just
you should see these originals. They're intense.
by the way, I'm in a freezing attic and I just got back from a trip. The heat has not reached the attic yet, so this attic is freezing. So, but I'm okay. I'm in blankets. But my nose is cold.
It's okay. It's nearly Christmas. Red
Yeah.
noses are. Yeah, you were doing this on. He was doing this on legal size paper.
Yeah, I mean, it was Bristol board, but it just was like, but yeah, I don't.
How do you
I mean,
even
I'm
find
sure I have
pens
it
that small?
Oh, so nowadays most people use technical pens, use disposable technical pens, and it's actually hard to find refillable ones. But at the time I was using refillable technical pens, which are have much more dependable lines than disposables. You can control the flow of ink better and stuff like that. And it makes a much crisper line than any disposable technical pen you can buy today, because everyone's doing everything on computer. So why do they need a tech pen?
Right. Yeah, I've barely drawn anything on paper for 6-7 years.
You're fully digital now.
Yeah, well, for my current project, I am. It's just I couldn't keep up otherwise. I couldn't keep up if I had to cover that whole piece of paper.
And also to scan it and erase it and
Scan it and
all
erase
that
it. Yeah,
stuff.
for sure.
I'm glad you brought up that issue of Top 10, Gene, because that, I believe among fans it's the most critically acclaimed or well-loved issue. It's the traffic accident issue.
Oh yeah.
And that ending right there. So how, like, can you walk me through how you guys work together on that? Because what a well-paced scene, and with, even though a lot of it is repeating a repeating angle, it was just so well paced and so well drawn and so well executed that it was really touching.
Well,
Either of
I
you
mean,
can start. Yeah.
I would say that, I mean, Alan Moore, and like in a way it's a pretty standard scene. It's just he set up this premise, and he just moves from character to character, and there's a little bit of humor and there's a little bit of pathos, and then it ends with this big thing. I mean, when Alan Moore is sort of like structuring a pretty standard scene, he nails it. I mean, he just is he's the master. So there wasn't a lot more for me to do. I think that we were just sort of like, we were sort of structuring, how's the space look, what kind of space do all the characters operate in, and and giving the proper sort of emphasis to this guy in the foreground and this person in the background and so forth. I mean, Gene did all the design for like the horse guy, and of course all the other characters that had already been established.
Let me bring up something really important here, though. So Alan Moore, I'm echoing stuff you told me in around 1999 or 2000, Zander. Okay, so but I'm very paraphrased. This isn't how he said it back then, but this is the point he made to me. Alan Moore is a belts and suspenders guy. He'll often put in the dialogue of a scene a description of the visuals of the scene. It's one of those things Will Eisner hated, but apparently Alan worked with some artists where I'm not going to name anyone at Awesome Press at this point, but he's worked with some people who would not draw what was in the script. So therefore he figured I'd better put it in the dialogue just in case the guy does not bother drawing the thing I described, that I described in the script.
Everyone knows what you're talking about, Gene.
Well, no, it actually happened before then, probably. But
and he had always called it artist proofing it, which I think is vaguely insulting. But like I think that it also extends back to 2000 AD days, when he had to do those 6-page stories and you never knew who he was going to get.
Yeah. But Zander, one of the great things Zander did is I tended to come to because I've worshipped Alan Moore since I was a teenager. I came to his scripts thinking I cannot mess with a holy writ. And Zander said, no, you see what he's doing here? He described the scene. You can draw the scene, and then it's in the dialogue, or it's in the dialogue. You don't even have to draw that bit. Or we drew it on the first panel. We don't have to draw it again on the second, third, fourth, and fifth panel. So I'm going to do this scene as a close-up instead, which saved me so much effort because Zander was able to mathematically analyze every important element in the equation and make sure everything was included, and then simplify this so that, instead of x plus x plus x, we're just going to simplify and write 3x. See, there we go. Equation fixed.
Right. Yes.
I love it. I love that explanation.
The mathematical equations are just floating around my head. Yeah, but I mean, I think, it was interesting I was kind of reverse engineering because he does himself like little sketches of what the pages are going to look like, and then he basically just writes out what that's going to be so that it can be more precise. But in a way, you're sort of like reading that and going like, I'm just going to kind of reverse engineer and try to imagine what it was that he was starting from, because a lot of times it's a pretty standard thing. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's in the foreground, this guy's in the background, and they're looking at each other, whatever. And it's nothing incredible. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's nothing sort of revolutionary 99% of the time. It's just, it's effective, obviously. But
yeah, but also you were really good at nailing down what was important in each scene. So in a panel, like a suggestion from you might be along the lines of, okay, in the script he says, show all 4 people, the 2 people having a conversation and show both heads. And you'd say, no, what's really interesting here is we need to do a close-up of Armageddon's face so we can see the fact that she is in horror that she's being partnered with a robot. And just like we need to get the look of horror on her face. That's an important part of the panel.
Right. Well, I mean, and it's like, yeah, you could, like you say, the belts and suspenders, you can establish that sort of space that they're in all the time, but you really only need to do it once or twice, once, and then when it changes, you do it again. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the funny thing is too, like when you were talking about not having to draw all these buildings and stuff, it's like when I'm thinking about doing layouts for Gene, especially on Top 10, it's like, it's kind of like you're scripting a $300 million movie, because you're like, if I put buildings in the background of all these things, I'm an indie filmmaker. I just do like little building, box. But if I put buildings in the background of the thing that I'm giving to Gene, he's going to have a nervous breakdown because he's going to be like, wow, I got to look up this building and I got to draw the Chrysler building in there. And I got to, so yeah, I didn't want to kill Gene off yet.
But you guys did 12 issues of that together. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, and then 4 more.
And then 4 more.
Yeah.
And 4 more. Do you have any interesting stories from conventions of that era? I know, Zander, we went off the record last time. You're talking about a con in Kansas, I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, Yeah, well, it's like all the ABC people went down there, and that was, I thought that was great fun. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
I
that
get
was
to meet
unique.
Rick Veitch. That's pretty cool.
Anything funny happen or no?
uh, well, Gene, did you go to the casino?
Oh yeah. Then my main thing there was they had an outpost of a kind of sawdust in the floor barbecue type place, but they put it in the riverboat casino. And so that was my first time having actually any type of real Southern style barbecue. And my initial thought was, um, it's kind of dry and chewy because I'm used to Chicago barbecue. And our tradition here is we take the pork ribs, we boil them like in a stew. After they're cooked, then we put them on the grill. So they're super soft, but they're not very flavorful. And the Southern tradition is you put the pork ribs or whatever on the smoker for 15 hours before you're ready to eat, and then slow cook it, and it's not going to be soggy and flavorless. So, so I was not used to that. It was like, took me a while to get used to it.
Speaking of that, your stylistic differences, I think, are very interesting because sometimes I talk to creative duos, and you can see how similar their styles are, right? So, somebody like Joe Rubinstein would have a similar kind of style. You can see how he would ink over somebody like John Byrne, but you two are so different that when they spun off Top 10, you guys had two very different looking books, and they didn't even take place in the same era. They didn't even take place in the same place. What did you guys think of each other's spin-offs?
Oh, I hated his. Yes. Well, I mean, one of the things is I was the model for about 4 of those characters in Top 10 or in 49ers.
Yeah.
So
Really?
It's like, yeah. In fact, I had gone to France years later, and and I was trying to like talk to the guy, and he didn't speak much English and I didn't speak much French, and so, but I was like, oh no, I did this. They didn't have smacks, but I'm like, look, 49ers. And I like pointed at the guy, and I'm like pointing at me. He was, oh. So,
any of the
anyway.
main characters? Were you the model for any of the main characters?
Yeah, Jet Lad. I was,
Yeah.
but if you look
You
at
were
it,
Jet
he looked
Lad.
like a very, very young, much more handsome me. Like,
I did not make him more handsome. I just made him pencil
but
neck.
so thin. So, I mean, I guess I was thin too, but like he's so thin. And I look at it and I'm like, whew, yeah, I'm not gonna be, I won't be posing as Jet Lad anytime soon.
Also, the captain of the precinct at that time was also based on Zander, which was like super
right?
muscular Zander.
Oh yeah. That's right.
You use a lot of models, Gene?
I used to back when I was younger and hung out with more people. Not as much now. Just now I do it for a few main characters, but back then I used to do. I was living in Minneapolis in a big community of comics people, so I had a lot of people I could kind of beg, "Hey, you want to be a model for this or that?" and they do it. So
It's pretty cool. Yeah. What did you think of Smacks?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was just kind of like it was so crazily visually different. It was a bit like going from like my movie would be like Help, and then going Xander's version was Yellow Submarine, where it's just kind of like bright and cheerful and graphic and like, wow, it is the same characters and the same universe, but wow, or in a sense, but it's like it expands it. So I loved it.
Yeah, it was a fun one to do, but I was in over my head. It was really hard for me to. It was really hard for me to pencil in it. Well, I was penciling and inking it for a while, and then they brought in a different inker because I was shipping them back to the United States to be lettered, and then they were shipping them back to me because I was living in Japan, and so we were shipping them like literally across the world. Because I, being young and full of juice, I was like, I want Todd Klein to hand letter these, so I can have lettering on my originals. And they were like, okay, for a while. And then so anyway, then they had to get a letter or an inker on it. Andrew Curry, who is this fantastic inker. He inked Brian Hitch's run. Oh, a lot of Brian Hitch's stuff, but it is run on the Ultimates, and he has this really sort of like gritty and grimy sort of style. And at the time, I was really moving into like a more like lean clear line, clear line type of style. And so I don't know if it was a good match. I wish that I'd kind of thought about what he was doing, and I would have like adjusted my pencils to be a little bit more I don't know, light, built around light and stuff like that. Something that he's more at home with.
I'll just say, as a reader, I didn't notice.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's a great inker. I think he did an awesome job. But yeah.
Yeah, so that world was so versatile that you were able to come up with two very different types of spin-offs, right? But I know, Gene, I've asked you this question before. Your favorites are Smacks and Toybox and Kemlo. Zander, did you have a favorite character?
I liked Shock-Headed Peter, because I like those ear things that he had. I mean, I like that he was dorky looking, and that he. I felt like I was really, my style was really well equipped to draw him, because the way his costume is pretty simple, and the way his face is pretty expressive, and so I always really liked him. I really did not like Kemlo Caesar. I don't like drawing dogs. I just can't do it very well. I mean, Gene does a great job, but and I love how he draws them. But people ask me to draw him every once in a while, and I'm like, I don't know, you're not gonna like this.
Kemlo is one of the characters I had reference photos for.
You have a dog?
Neighbor's dog.
Oh,
a neighbor's dog. Yeah.
Who did you not like drawing, Gene?
Oh,
I know this
sometimes
answer.
that bastard Gene Ha would design characters I just hated drawing, and it's just like I would curse his name of like, why did you design paisley pants for this character, you bastard? I love drawing King Peacock from the waist up, but from the waist down, it was like I'm the kind of anal retentive where I'm going to make sure the paisleys are consistent every time I draw those pants, and trying to do that to make sure it was like it was really hard.
Consistent too, not just there. Like I would have been like, I would have driven myself crazy just filling in the paisley stuff, but I never would have made it consistent.
No, I had like this these multi-page reference sheets of like the pattern from different angles and stuff like that, and it was just like, oh, so painful. Also the geometry of Armageddon's the torso over armor is way more mathematically complex than you'd think from just looking at it. It looks boxy, but it's actually got some subtle weird angles built into it that are hard to draw from different angles. I probably should have just taken a cereal box, taped it together in different ways, and then just taken photographs, but I was dumb and young, and I for some reason didn't think that through. David Peterson has taught me the way.
You got to just brute force your way through every drawing.
Yeah.
David Peterson of Mouse Guard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he builds architectural models of all of his almost every chance he gets. He'll just do it because he loves to do it, and then that's his excuse, but also makes his book more convincing and beautiful.
Yeah, my studio mate Peter Wortman does a lot of 3D models, or digital 3D models, and I mean, it works. It's great.
Yeah, Armageddon was going to be my guess. So
yeah,
I would have. That's another one of those things where it's like I would have it just would have been boxy. It just would have gotten boxier over time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. Well, actually, I would have. Yeah, I know. I have in my head, if I get a chance to ever redesign those characters, I know how I would redesign like King Peacock, and I know how I would redesign Armageddon's armor to kind of update it. So it still kind of feels like the old one, but just like, oh, they got an upgraded armor and stuff like that, so it'd be easier to draw.
Yeah.
You realize with that one sentence, you've just given a bunch of top 10 fans hope that one day you might go back to this.
Yeah, the thing is,
hey,
I mean,
you know what? Hey, we would. I think. I mean, I would.
I would too, but I think we keep on. It is a corporate owned. It's a corporate owned IP, and I keep on coming up with non-corporate things I really want to do. So like essentially, if Zander said let's do our analog for top 10 that's not owned by DC Comics, I'd actually be a little bit quicker to jump on it than working for DC again.
Yeah. Well, I And I agree. I mean, I agree with that. It's always, I think it's always better to scrape off the serial numbers. I mean, if you're not really concerned about sales, like it's not like
Yeah.
top 10 ever sold like crazy. It did when Alan Moore was writing it pretty well, but even then it was like sold okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like
is Ripoff Press still around? Because we could do bottom 5.
I wonder if we could think of an even better name if we really tried hard.
And just to close off the top 10 portion of the interview, I just want to say, I think I've told you before, Gene, this is the comic that I've given the most to non-readers, because one, they love the Easter eggs and they realize that they actually have to look at the art. So it's been the perfect gateway comic for like 24 years for me. So that's pretty cool.
I think that's really interesting that there's so many people who, and I agree with you, like there's so many people who just are like, oh yeah, I never look at the art, I just read the word balloons. And it's like, how do you even know who's speaking and like where they are or what's going on?
Expression on their face, or
yeah, are they being sarcastic? What's going on?
Exactly. I've noticed that a lot of people who did work in ABC, I know Zander, you were already working on your own stuff before top 10, but I noticed a lot of the people who were working on ABC ended up also becoming writers. Do you think that has something to do with Alan Moore's influence, or was that always going to happen, do you think?
I mean, I think that, it took a while for, Gene's now writing May, and then like J.H. Williams is writing, what's he writing now? Is it Macro? What's that?
Echolands.
Oh, Echolands. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, it was like, oh, this is how you write comics. This is how you write good comics. That he had this system, and it was so ornate, and it was so sort of complete. It definitely sort of like kicked me into writing, being more of a writer, sort of self-consciously, instead of just like giving myself something to draw, which is what I've been doing before.
Working with Alan was a bit of a kickstart for me doing writing, but honestly, working with Zander was a much bigger kickstart for it, because he was able to explain the stories to me, and listening to Zander explain the philosophy of what makes a page work and what doesn't make a page work was one of the big things that got me thinking, maybe I can do this. And then I'm not going to name the writer, but then while I was in the same studio building, having a project with the writer, and then having the writer stop answering his emails and telephone the week script was due, and the editor saying, there's only one man left in the room, therefore, or there's only one creator left in the room, and that's Eugene, you need to write the script, was the other big instigation for me writing my first story.
Wow. That feels like there's a story there that probably shouldn't go on the record.
There is.
Right.
He's
a slanderous story.
Yeah.
Okay. So Zander, I know you've lived abroad for a while. And Gene, obviously, you're a Korean American. With Mae and Kaijumax, you're really showing the diaspora of the cultures that you're interested in or that you come from. How important is that to you guys, being able to represent various parts of world culture and world pop culture and world interests in a modern book?
Gene, you want to go first?
The thing is, like, it's based a bit on Czech culture, just because I have a fascination with Czechia, or what we used to call the Czech Republic. But also, just like at the time I started working on it and then writing it and drawing it, 2013 to 2015, the biggest instigation was that I knew all these amazing female geeks, like who clerks at comic shops, fellow creators, things like that, who I just thought were like frankly heroic in what they were doing and the way they were going about their lives. But I didn't see someone like them represented in very much in pop culture. The way I always describe it is, if there was going to be a female geek inside of a TV show or a comic book, it tended to either be the woman speaking to the action hero over his headset saying, okay, go down the hallway, now go through that door and then cut the red wire. Or the other thing is female geek in pop culture would be have a handsome boy come up to her, take off her glasses and say, oh my God, you're not a geek, you're beautiful. And then she'd say, oh, thank God I don't have to be a geek anymore. Let's go shopping, and I never have to think about math again. Gilmore Girls.
In my mind,
So,
it's
yeah.
she's all that. But
Yeah, there's a few things like it's a trope. It's a pretty regular trope, but it's better now. But at the
there's
time,
a he's all that now. I think it's Rachel Lee Cook's son who's the main character, and
oh wow,
he wears glasses and he has to remove them. I think it's funny. Yeah. What about you, Xander?
Well, I mean, I'm a middle-aged white guy. It's I think that it's easy to fall into things where you are like, oh, I'm going to harken back to an old style of thing, and whoopsie daisy, all my characters are white. And I think that kind of stuff is really tiresome. I think that but I also think that comics have a huge advantage, because it's like, well, I don't have to cast people to do this, and also, like, they don't have to be humans, they don't have to be. And so I can kind of, like, it seems to be silly to me to ever try to not sort of like be as broad as you possibly can, in terms of like diversity of characters, diversity of body shapes, diversity of like sexualities, diversity of like, why would you limit yourself? There aren't any comics codes that I have to follow. There aren't any sort of like, we got to have a white lead if we want this to make $100 million or whatever. Like, none of these things are concerns to me. So it's like, yeah, absolutely, I want to make these comics as as comfortable in the world that we now live in as they can be, instead of just, I mean, that's why I'm glad I'm not like doing DC or Marvel comics, because it's like, it's all baked into those characters that, they're 90% white, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it unless you really want to dig in and start creating new characters for a mega corporation.
We'll get back to one of you doing a big time DC comic pretty in a little bit. Hi, Gene. But with both Mae and Kaijumax, so Mae's it's still I think after your DC work you'll be going back to it, right?
There's actually something else on the horizon, but it's it happened at Baltimore, where my thing, like why I worked on Top 10 and the reason why I've done a lot of other things is because why I did Top 10 with Alan Moore, why I did Top 10 with Zander, is I follow writers I really love, and I try to just trust them and go where they, see where they want to take the story. And I met an amazing writer at Baltimore who I didn't know very much about. And then afterwards, I read that writer's books, and you'll see I'm being very careful about gender right now. And they're fantastic books, fantastic. And then contacted them, and so suddenly it looks like something totally new and unexpected is in the offing. So it would be non-corporate IP, something weird, something we're going to create together. But yeah, when I meet writers who I really like, I want to work with them. So that, I mean, again, when I met Zander inside of Vaughn's inside of Indiana, I was like, oh, I would love to work with this guy someday. So
that's cool. So with
You did
it. So because Zander, you're actually the letterer of Mae, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think and I love lettering. Like, I know that a lot of people are like, oh, it's like it's necessary evil. It's like, I love it. I love lettering. It's so much fun. It's just, so, and of course, when Gene, the idea that Gene likes my lettering enough that he wanted me to do it, it was a huge, I mean, it's as much as like, oh, he likes my writing. Like, it's like, oh, my writing, big whoop. Yeah, but he likes my lettering, great. No, I'm just kidding. But it is really fun. I mean, I really do enjoy lettering that book.
Yeah, everything about Zander's storytelling is just, it expresses ideas and emotions passionately, and kind of in this kind of wild rock and roll style. Everything about his storytelling, and I wanted that element of looseness and rock and roll and passion and wildness in my story, which would come from Zander's lettering. So that's why I wanted it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that my lettering pretty idiosyncratic for your book. I mean, it adds another layer of idiosyncrasy, I should say.
Yeah. Well, people when they look at May will because I was going for a very painterly coloring style as opposed to like the simplified styles that most people use. So I've been asked if I use 3D software to generate the images. And if I put a super tight lettering style on top of that, the whole thing would have just looked like a computer generated page to some people.
Yeah.
And Zander's the antidote.
Right. Yeah, right. Just making it a little bit, so you can see the fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
Zander,
go tight ahead. Drummer and the wild bassist. So yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
Zander, you're in the final season of Kaijumax.
Yeah, I'm on the second to last issue, which is
how's that feeling for you?
Good. It's people are like, oh, I wish it could last forever, and I'm like, I don't. Like, I mean, it's been super fun, but man, I'm really glad that it'll just be nice to sort of be done with a 6-year project, and it's like this can continue to exist as sort of its own thing. Hopefully, go out on a high note, all that stuff. But it is interesting too. Like, I'm also like, wow, I'm drawing this character for the last time. Like, this is. And it's not so emotional, but it's kind of emotional. Like, well, like I like that character, or, and I can draw them anytime I want, of course, but there's something that I really, it's going to feel like a loss, I think, with, when I get to that last page.
I should also mention that I've said this before, and I'm going to repeat it now. If you are a fan of the storytelling in top 10, Kaijumax is the natural successor. It has all the complexity and the fun and the Easter eggs and literally this, the visual storyteller who's behind top 10, who figured out the storytelling, that's Zander. He's there.
And
also, can I just show this? Another one of my favorite books. But yeah, just look at this lettering. It's just so energetic and passionate.
Look, cussing right there on the page.
So here's a what if question for you guys. Gene, you told me before that originally in top 10 you had an idea for Superman getting drunk.
Oh yeah.
And then Alan said, it'd be funnier if it wasn't Superman, if it was Godzilla.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. What if Alan never makes that suggestion? Does Kaijumax still happen?
Wow, good question. That's a really good question. I don't, hopefully, but I don't know, because that panel and like some of the subsequent panels where he was talking about, like the son of the Godzilla character is talking about like, oh yeah, the Monster Island guys are all a bunch of potheads. They'll never none of them want to drink. It's like that sort of like anthropomorphism and that sort of seediness like was totally the sort of the wellspring of Kaijumax, or at least me wanting to do a kaiju thing and that sort of stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I should really emphasize here now, beyond figuring out all the visual storytelling inside of top 10 after page 13 of issue 1, Zander also designed a huge amount of the characters after that. So all of the kaiju, pretty much, like especially the Gojira character and the son of Gojira character, he did these beautiful sketches of what they'd look like, and then I just over-rendered them. That was my job.
Yeah, he Gene Ha'd them up.
Is there a Zander cannoning them up too?
Oh no, I Zander Cannon them down.
You minimize.
I would draw, because Gene of course designed Smacks because he was right from the beginning. So then I sort of Zander Cannoned him down to his more simplified version that's less rendered, less black. Like there's less of a sort of an inky black on his face.
So I'm reading May, and I see she's in college, and she's got a deal.
She's not in college. Her
she's
best
in high
friend's in
school.
college. Yeah.
She's in
she
high
graduated
school.
from high school, but she hasn't gone to college because she's trapped in her town.
Oh, that's true. Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. So she, she's at that age where that would appeal to a lot of young adults, young adult females, young adult males also. And then I'm reading Kaijumax, and then there's all these adult themes like incarceration and grooming. And do you think that with Xander, with your more cartoony minimal style, it's easier for you to get away with stuff?
Yeah, I think that I was originally going to just be the writer on Kaijumax, and Ryan Brown, who you may know, who did Curse Words and God Hates Astronauts, he was going to be the artist, and his stuff is much more, it's not as realistic as Gene's is, but it's much more vivid and much more sort of grounded in the real world. And I think that with the same script that it's got now, I don't think that people would have tolerated the cruelties that they were in for if it had a realistic style. But it's like little cartoon characters, being torn in half or whatever, splattered with blood. I think that, I don't know, I think that people tolerate that a little bit better, and they can see the absurdity of it as well as the horror, and if that's what I'm going for. So yeah, I do think I can get away with quite a bit that way.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a famous story that I can't remember his name, but Mouse was originally done he experimented with in a more rendered realistic style, still mice going through the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
But then he realized after a certain point, no, I need to strip this down, get rid of all the over rendering, and then people will be able to read the thing. And I think if he stayed with a highly rendered three-dimensionally rendered shadowed mice going through the Holocaust, it would have been too much for too many people, for a lot of people. And if he'd actually just gone with people going through the Holocaust, going through those stories, yeah, I mean, I think only a quarter of the readers would have been able to handle it all the way to the end. It's just too much.
It's too grim. Yeah, I mean, I have the a book of like extra material for Mouse, and it has that strip, and it's really, it's interesting. And then he also did stuff where he was doing kind of cutesy stuff, like calling Auschwitz Mauschwitz, and there was he wasn't just telling it in that visual style. It was sort of like an alternate world. And yeah, anyway, he made the right decision. It was much better the way he did it.
Do you ever feel that in your work, Gene? Like sometimes maybe you have to pull back on what you're showing because your style is too real? Especially the way you color now.
Yeah, the pulling back has to be done kind of in the writing a little. Well, okay, so yes, it has to be done in the writing oftentimes, as opposed to the visuals, because the part of the point of mine is I like it's putting grottiness in where you don't expect it. But if I was to tell the story of a horribly rapey prison or something like that, where someone injects a parasite into your belly or something like that as a form of rape or something like that, and it was done to the Gene hostile, that would just be too much. That would freak me out, and it would really freak out the readers. So I have to figure out clever ways to kind of like to make it all palatable and stuff like that, and still keep it kind of grounded and three-dimensional. Visually three-dimensional is what I mean.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, you don't want me
I
drawing.
agree with what he says. I think it's really, I mean, yeah, it's like it's too you're sort of intimately aware of like all the textures and all of like the, how things would feel. It's too much, Yeah.
So with something like Smacks, right? So I'm thinking of the Jeff Smacks and what's her name? The sister?
Robin.
Oh yeah,
Rexa.
Toy Boxer Slinger. Yeah, Robin Slinger.
No,
Rexa,
his sister,
Rexa, yeah. So
Rexa, sorry.
I'm thinking of their romance. And so Gene, do you think you would have been able to do that comfortably in your
trying to imagine me drawing Smacks is oh god, I mean, like the flashback scene to their traumatic childhood, it would have felt very traumatic, and if that was the point of the scene, but in a way it was kind of like, I mean, this is spoilers in case anyone hasn't read Smacks, but I mean, we're spoilers on everything.
It's 20 years.
The ways, yeah. Part of the thing is like, it was Alan and Xander were telling the story about people who in the past have gone through something horrible and traumatic, and then they found ways to deal with it, and it kind of in their how they've psychologically dealt with it is kind of represented by Zander's style. If you could not tell the same story at all with my drawings. It would have been, and then I have a photographic memory of what it was like to have an abusive parent, a physically abusive parent. It would have just been like photographic memory. We'll never be able to wipe this from mind, or pretend like it was something else, or adapt to it, or something like that, or just say that's, it made me stronger. It's just like, no, it's a constant memory that's traumatizing me every second I'm awake. It would have been a different story.
Yeah, and I softened it a little bit, like he called for stuff that I'm like, I'm gonna put that in the shadows, like
Yeah.
a little grim.
So I've been asking this to everybody who's a writer artist lately. Does Gene Ha does Gene Ha the artist, and does Zander Cannon the artist, do they ever get mad at Gene Ha the writer and Zander Cannon the writer?
Gene, why don't you go first?
Yeah, when I'm doing my rough layout stage where I don't have to throw in as many details, I will throw in crowd scenes and buildings, and I decided one issue had to be inside of a party where everyone was dressed in fancy dress, and there was gorgeous architecture of a ruined architecture inside this giant ruined ballroom dome. And it was just like, when I was finishing that, I was just like, oh, you're an a-hole. You're just a jerk, Gene. You're a jerk writer. I hate you.
Yeah, I don't, the layout, I hate the layout guy. Zander, I think that he's a real jerk, because it's like he'll stage something. It's like, oh great, a wedding scene where everybody's like sitting at tables, but you can see their legs under the table, and like there's flowers, like flower arrangements on every table, and even in my style, which is sort of like the details are pretty much minimal, it's still exhausting. I also get mad at my character designer, me.
Oh, I love your character designer.
He tries his best, but he also sometimes has to do the most on like some robot that's like 50 robots all mashed together, and I'm like, oh, that'll be fun to draw once, and then it's not fun to draw 40 times. So
wait a minute, there was one design of yours from Top 10 I did kind of hate. The second issue, not Mortician, what do they call the guy who looks at the dead bodies? CSIs them.
It was Sally Joe.
Yeah, Quincy MD, medical examiner, ME, medical examiner.
Yeah. Oh, that costume.
That guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was so hard to draw.
Yeah, that's true. Charan was his name.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he doesn't show up that much.
Yeah. I was not thinking of who it was going to at the time. I was just like, oh yeah, this would be easy, like
It was complex, but it was only for a few pages.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, I wouldn't do that to you again.
Yeah, you would, but it's okay. You're worth it.
So this was a treat. The Marvel anthology book.
Right.
And
that
was
the first Marvel work I've ever had.
Really?
So, yeah.
Huh.
Which is pretty funny. Like, in this prestigious, thing, like, it's not like I was just sort of doing something in the background of like their 4th tier comics. It was like kind of a great introduction, like thrown in the deep end, sort of.
That's pretty cool. Like, I assume, Gene, that you just got personally contacted by Alex Ross.
Yeah, we live in the same metro area and stuff like that, and we've been friends for a while. So he just contacted a bunch of people he wanted to throw together in an anthology, and I was lucky enough to be one of them. So, and then he asked me to draw it. I've been shifting to all digital for a while, and he said, but I want you to do it on paper.
What a jerk.
In full color on paper.
Oh wow.
I love this story because it's I was telling Xander before you came in, Gene. I was telling Xander that there's always those tourists who are like, I love your culture. Let me just fix it a little bit.
Yeah.
I love the food. Let me show you how to make it better. And it's so that kind of really resonated with me. So for those unfamiliar, to set the stage a little bit, you worked on a Wong story, and you shared, Gene, on Facebook some of the process, and I'd like to share my screen so we can go through them. You guys can maybe walk us through them.
Yeah.
All right, so let me just share my screen here. All right, so this is page 2. I don't know if you can see the script. And I believe, Xander, you're the one who wrote the script, right? Or
Yeah, that's right.
I
Wow.
always have a question about this, which is, how do you know which words in the dialogue you're gonna make bold? Is that just a design choice? Is that an emphasis choice? Like this is meant to read like you won't believe this, but we got something, or
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a little bit, squishy, but I mean, the idea that like whatever you would emphasize with your voice, unless it's something like a name that you need to have, or you want it to be, something that you want people to make sure that they read. I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people who are trying to sort of say like, don't emphasize anything. That's sort of like kid stuff.
really?
Well, I mean, I know that like Garth Ennis never emphasizes any words in his dialogue. It's always the same font or whatever, the same typeface.
So it'll be up to the reader to figure out what to emphasize. So
Yeah, that makes sense too, but I won't do it.
and then these layouts. So when you move from here to here, what's that particular process like? Do you just take a look and then try to translate?
I tell you what, I don't move from left to right here. I move from right to left. Like I do the page first, and like sort of plot it out visually, and then I'll just write the script to sort of make sure that I'm covering all the gaps, and because I mean these panels are a little bit vague, but then I can sort of say like, okay, make sure that this guy is doing this and this person is doing that and so forth.
Okay. With
So
that,
really it's like the main thing is the layout, and then the script is sort of the artifact that comes out of it.
with that, Gene, can you walk me through how you take these layouts and then just go through just how you translate them?
I mean, I look for the storytelling that Xander's put into the layouts and then just over render it. Let me see. A lot of it is the one thing that you'll see that's really different between his layout and mine is things like camera distance. I'll sometimes move the camera further away or closer. And then Xander is not an obsessive perspective guy. And
that's a nice way of putting it.
You put it in when you need it, but you're not like, oh, I'm doing this. If the scene doesn't need to have a background in perspective, you're not going to go nuts making sure the lampposts are at the right angle when you're looking in the sky or something like that. And for me, it's kind of like, no, if unless it's supposed to be a city where the lampposts were badly constructed, they'll all point at the same vanishing point in the sky. So yeah, in the last panel, you'll see that like a lot was just me. Well, like, okay, where Captain America was in the scene did not matter. So I was going to throw in Captain America and stuff like that. I wanted to I knew that She-Hulk was a member of the team of the Avengers at the time then, and I wanted to set it pretty much at that moment in Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. So therefore I wanted to have the version of She-Hulk that was in the Avengers at that time. So I wanted to put some emphasis on her. And then I wanted to really, really make sure that it's clear this is Milwaukee. So I think that's City Hall in Milwaukee or the post office or some of the famous, it's a pretty landmarky building in Milwaukee.
Wow.
I can't remember which one.
I can't believe you did that. Like I just threw in Milwaukee just as an arbitrary choice. And you're
Yeah, I made sure. Speaking of lampposts, I made sure that the lampposts in front of the building are the lampposts that are in front of that building, things like
Oh
that. So
no, Gene, I'm sorry.
it's okay. No,
You're so
you did
used to
not force me
kidding.
to do that. You could have done any city in the world, and I would have been like, oh, I got to make sure the manhole covers look right, man. Whatever. So
It's easier these days with Google, I assume.
Yeah, Street View. That's pretty cool.
With Street View, yeah. So what is the so over here, like it didn't matter where Captain America was on the page, but it matter that he was in the foreground?
Not to me.
Actually, I like drawing Captain America's costume also. So I wanted to put him kind of big in the foreground because he's just fun to draw. So I kind of wanted to keep that bit of it. Let me see. Though also the bastardly things that Gene does to a Zander page to himself. Zander usually doesn't throw in upside down cars, which are the hardest things to get reference of. And that's kind of a trope with me. And it's my fault. Then I have to do the research. I'm like, oh, what's the undercarriage of this car look like? And I'll find out.
What is the thought process behind taking Doctor Strange from the middle of this panel to moving him up a little bit to the upper right?
I just wanted to emphasize. Well, I wanted to emphasize him inside the scene by not putting too much of the chaos directly contacting with him, intersecting with him. And also to show that he's supernatural and stuff like that. He's got his supernatural magic-y powers and stuff like that. And the cape had made such a big impression during the movie. So I just kind of, it was just a lot of things. But mostly it was just finding a different way than Zander did to isolate him from the chaos in the scene and still have a constant wall of chaos.
When you, so this is by Copic marker, right?
Yeah.
So
little pencil, Copic.
I saw that you did the drawings first before you put in the panel borders. So how did you stay within the lines? Asks everyone who's ever tried coloring anything.
The white is also, I put in the white in the gutters between the panel borders, and I put in the panel borders. So yeah, I bled all over the place.
Okay. All right. Zander, how does it feel when seeing your thumbnails get turned into a Gene Ha page like this?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like it's astonishing, because for me, it's just sort of like almost nothing more than just sort of like replacing a virtual camera, it's just, he'll be right there. I only put any details on the face to say, this is who this is, just so that you know. And so having, seeing like the striations in She-Hulk's muscles and like the upside down car and the Milwaukee City Hall or whatever, like it's astonishing. It's just, it's so cool to see, because again, I'm just doing something that's just one step above stick figures, so it's amazing to see.
I think a pretty good comparison to what we do is it's a bit like a Broadway songwriting duo where you have a lyricist who writes the lyrics to the songs first, and then you have somebody else who has to do the melody for it and the orchestration. And that involves, a whole orchestra of musicians and stuff like that doing all these things. And the words are pretty direct and relatively simple linearly in a linear way compared to a whole orchestra with like, a 15-piece orchestra or a 30-piece orchestra. But you have to make sure that every musician inside that 30-piece orchestra is there to serve the words in the story.
Yeah.
And that's like when I designed what the monsters are fighting look like. I had to look at the script that Zander gave me, and I had to realize at some point, okay, so the villain is a corporate guy whose company is called Orlock Tech, so I have to make a logo for it, and I have to figure out a logo that I can throw on the monsters that is not totally obviously a logo. And you'll see that logo repeated on the guy, on his equipment, and on different sections of the monsters.
What were
Gene?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're a miracle. I didn't think about any of that stuff, and so but I also knew that you were gonna take the ball and run with it. So I think that's really fun to do. And like there's when people sort of do, people kind of discount the role of the artist as the co-creator, because it's like they're like, wow, yeah, the writer just came up with all those ideas, and it's like, but the visual storytelling is so important. The way that the way that you create lore, like Gene was just talking about, the way that you create lore by saying like, well, here's the logo that it has to be on all these monsters, and that it's a little it's a little hint for what's going to be happening later, and where they are, and that sort of stuff is so much work and so much thinking, so much storytelling that's not words at all.
Yeah, but there's a real limit to how much an artist can fix a bad script, or how much the finishing artist can fix bad layouts. And that's never a problem with Zander stuff. He always gives me a solid foundation where I can keep on adding more and more stuff to it if I want to. And because the skeleton's good, the rest of the body works just fine.
Yeah, how do you feel about that, Gene? The fact that a lot of fans tend to credit the writer. So like, I'm thinking right now, the Hawkeye series is about to come out, and everybody's talking about the fraction run, but all anyone ever talks about with the fraction run is David Aja's art. And I'm like, why don't you ever call it the Matt Fraction and David Aja run? So like,
Yeah.
what do you feel about that kind of thing?
And what just hit the news too was they're adapting the Inkle into a movie, and they're like, oh yeah, Alejandro Jodorowsky's Inkle, and it's like, excuse me, I don't know if you've heard of a little artist named Mobius, but he had something to do with it too.
Yeah, the guy that most people probably think of when they think of the Inkle.
Right.
Yeah, I was actually a little surprised to find out, oh, wait a minute, Jodorowsky wrote that one too? I know who drew it, but yeah.
I had the same thought. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? The fact that fans think of it that way? Because I find it kind of frustrating.
It's completely frustrating. And I'm not in the position where that matters too much to me right now, because I'm a writer or artist. But like, yeah, I think that every writer knows too, like, if I had two artists that I was thinking about going with, and if I had gone with the other one, it would be completely different, like I was just saying, like, oh, it would have been much more realistic, and therefore, I would have had to dial back the writing, or, like every writer knows that this is that, like, the artists create so much about what's appealing to this, about this series, about any series.
Yeah. It's a bit like having like if you have a literary critic who's used to, or an English professor who's used to critiquing novels and prose and things like that, and they have to analyze a movie or a comic book or things like that. Oftentimes they'll treat it as a bunch of words with some people on stage just like narrating it like thing, and then someone else is like dangling a cow behind them to indicate there's a background. And it's like, no, it's not just a script reading, it's every element of a good movie or every element of a good comic book is there to make the story stronger if it's done well. And there's nothing you can do to force these people to understand how the artwork works. And it's one of those things about critics, whether they're professional critics or just a random reader, they'll always come at it with a focus, and they'll be angry if, like, you're bad at drawing facial expressions, or if you're bad at, a classic example, if you're bad at drawing feet and you keep on drawing figures where the feet keep on getting cut off at the bottom of the panel, or have a pouch in the way, that type of thing. But every bit has to kind of work together, even if it seems like you're just trying not to draw feet.
I feel like, all right, never mind. So
I'll smile because I can't remember. I'm so horrible with names. The artist who co-created Deadpool and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he came from a time. Oh no, you go ahead and name him. But he came from a time period. Yeah, Rob Liefeld. He came from a time period where the artist was king, where collectors did not care so much about the script. They cared so much more about the artists. And I'm glad we're in a period where the story matters more. I'm not sure if you can get everyone to agree that both parts are important, but it's nice to have good scripts to draw and have people actually care that the stories are good. And again, an artist can only go so far in fixing a bad script.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
One of the things that I like to say is like, Alan Moore is my favorite writer of all time. But I also think that it's no coincidence that, company included, that he's worked with some of the greatest artists of all time.
yeah. Oh wait, can I just I forgot the last thought I had about Rob Liefeld.
Okay.
Okay. There are some things he's not great at technically, but his comics were visually fun. And they did get across a style of storytelling that meant a lot to a lot of people, and that me or Zander would not be able to replicate. Rob Liefeld is amazing at being Rob Liefeld as an artist.
And there's nobody else, right? It's irreplicable.
Yeah, it's the Stardust Cowboy. It may not be your cup of tea, but if you want someone to be the Stardust Cowboy and make weird music or do weird comic books that are really exciting, if you can get into it, no one out Rob Liefeld's Rob Liefeld.
Speaking of great writers you're going to work with, how is Wonder Woman Historia coming along with Kelly Sue DeConnick?
There are 8 pages left for me to draw in volume 2, and a cover. Let me see. And it is one of the most artistically ambitious. No, it is the most artistically ambitious script I've ever worked on. And she'll throw challenges at me that are just kind of, she does not know how to do it, but she said, essentially she's saying, this doesn't happen very often, but once in a while she'll just say, I don't know how this will be done visually, but Gene, I know you're really good at this type of thing. This isn't giving anything away, because essentially I don't think very many of the people listening to this are going to be able to figure this out either. Represent 3,000 years of oppression of women using feathers. That was in the script, and it's kind of like,
No problem.
yeah, it took me a minute, but it's like, I figured it out, and other artists who've seen it is like, that is a really good solution. So she was right. I actually was able to figure out a good solution to it.
Have you seen this, Zander?
No, I haven't. And I can't wait. That sounds awesome.
So when you hear something like that, Zander, do you start thinking like, how would I do this?
I mean, kind of, but I hope there's more to the description than that.
There's more, but that was the kind of the big problem she wanted me to creative problem she wanted me to solve in the page. And she said, I know you're going to come up with an interesting solution to this, so just go to it. And she knew that she could throw weird challenges at me like that. But when I say it's artistically ambitious, it's not just in like mystery boxes like that I have to solve. It's also it's just retelling the history of the Amazons and Wonder Woman in a way that honors the past, but twists everything in a way that changes the meaning of things in a way I did not expect. Like, there's all been the questions like, is Zeus the father of Wonder Woman? And based on tweets that Kelly Sue DeConnick has already said, I can say that Zeus is not the father of Wonder Woman, but it's not an easy answer of what is the origin of Wonder Woman. And the choices Kelly Sue DeConnick made add layers of meaning to the history of the Amazons and Wonder Woman that did not exist before Kelly Sue DeConnick decided to play with it. It's so ambitious what she's doing.
That's cool.
How, like, did you your book ended by Phil Jimenez and Nicola Scott, and those two are very associated with Wonder Woman. So do you feel any pressure like living up to that?
Oh, hell yeah. If I was just following the Phil Jimenez of 10 years ago, I'd be like, okay, this can be tough, but this is a Gene Ha size challenge. I can do this. But Phil Jimenez doing the best work of his career, the most ambitious work. He's Kelly Sue DeConnicking it. It's like he upped his ambition, by an order of magnitude, the way Kelly Sue DeConnick did. And it's kind of like, I can't even get close to what you're doing, Phil. I'm going to do something else that hopefully will not look embarrassing next to your stuff. But Phil, that's insane. It is. He started not that much before me, and he started like a year before me, and he's actually just finishing a few months before me. The amount of effort he's put into these pages is insane. And he would rework things or do a composition where it's like, okay, here's the composition of the story. I'd see the layouts because he hadn't finished the page yet. And I think, okay, I think I know what's going on. And then he would just add details and storytelling and costumes and tricks. And it was just like a scene with like, I think he's releases, I'm pretty sure he's releases on Instagram, a scene of essentially hundreds of Greek vases with paintings on the side doing storytelling in the ancient Greek vase painting style. And every one of them is thought out and a real story. And it's just hundreds of these floating in the air. And they're all, you can make out what's happening on each vase. And it's like, no,
Xander's shaking his head.
Crazy. He doesn't do that.
Yeah. I mean, Phil is astonishing. Like,
yeah. Phil 10 years ago wouldn't have done that. He'd be like, no, screw that. I'm not doing that. And now he's like, this is my mission. I will make this perfect. And
I did layouts for Phil a bit, maybe 10 years ago, about on Fairest when he was doing that. And yeah, I mean, he would put so much detail into stuff. I mean, again, it was like, I would do a layout and it's like, oh, sorry, I accidentally included this background thing that you're going to have to over render.
It's so good.
And that's out next year, right, Gene?
His book is out this year, and my book is out next spring.
Next spring. Okay, looking forward to it. And oversized, right? Black label.
Yes.
Bondazane sized. Yeah. So last question. What is the main thing that the two of you have learned from each other and continue to learn from each other?
Oh man. Well, like when people always sort of talked about like, and I don't know how true this is anymore, but I used to sort of say like, well, if you're good, if you're on time, and if you're pleasant to talk to, you'll always have work in comics. Like, and really you can kind of choose two of those. And it's like, that's what Gene has taught me. Like, Gene has always been so friendly and so kind. And it's like, oh yeah, like it's, there's always people who are going to complain about this or that, or like, have a bad attitude about this or that. And it's like, I've never known Gene to have a bad attitude about a single thing. And so it's like, yeah, no wonder he's has the reputation he does, like, so that's been one of the big things that I've learned from Gene. I mean, aside from all the dumb art stuff.
There's a thing where like, when I was in the New Mexico Comic-Con, Lisa was surprised because she got to actually see me get angry. We're in our hotel room and there's somebody.
That's this weekend, right?
Last weekend. Someone was knocking on our hotel room door, and then they would take something metal and then knock on the door again. Then they would knock on the door, and I was in the bathroom. I thought Lisa was doing something outside in the main part of the hotel room, and she's like, "No, there's a bunch of teenage boys in the hallway, and they're knocking on the door. I don't know why." And Lisa kind of like hit to the side when she saw me go to the door, and just seeing Lisa hide to the side was like, that just got my ire up. It was like, you forced my wife to hide, you bastards. So I opened the door, and then I said in my Don Draper voice, to the boy knocking on the door at that moment, "Bitch, what the F do you think you're doing?" And he was like, "Oh, I thought you were other teenage kids on our field trippy thing." And it's just like, and Lisa was like, "Man, I do not like seeing you get angry. Don't do that again." And it's like, yeah, but they were, no, they're just kids. Just don't do that.
It happens.
Yeah. The biggest thing I learned, well, not the biggest thing, but the thing that comes to mind right now that I learned from Xander, because I learned so many things. There's an urge when you're an artist doing comic books, like you want to play with all the tricks. I'm like, I learned so much from, like, I would idolize Bill Sienkiewicz when I was a kid, and he would do so many experimental things and things like Electro Assassin. And I wanted to like do all the Bill Sienkiewicz experiments at once. And one of the things Xander taught me was you can do one tricky thing per panel. One tricky thing. Don't do 2 or 3. Remember your main point. And if you're gonna do something complex, just do one. And then also each page of storytelling, make sure that something interesting happens. You can kind of have a slow, boring panel or a panel that's exposition, but by the end of the page, something interesting has to happen that changes the story. And if you took that page out, story's ruined. So those are he focus on the story and clear storytelling. You get the main point across. You can do a few tricks here and there, but not too many at once, and just keep that main thread going. Never forget it.
And
That sounds pretty smart. I wish I'd known the guy who said that.
That's how you explained your layouts to me on Top 10. So,
Oh, okay.
and what's next for the two of you together? Or
Oh,
actually,
man.
what is next for you after Kaijumax?
I'm not currently sure. You know, like I've got a couple options. You know, I might go back and do the Replacement God, which is a fantasy series from the 90s. I've got a couple like YA graphic novels that I've been thinking about. I've got a science fiction series that I've been thinking about. I'm I'm going to work with Ryan Brown on a Kickstarter, and you know, I don't know. I'm hoping to do a little thing with John Bivens, who's one of my studio mates, like do a horror something or other with him. So I don't know. I also want to take a break. Like I was kind of like, can I just draw like I don't know, like a licensed book for 3 months and just, you know, and just like cleanse my palate, not have to think about all the lore or whatever.
I'm kind of at the same point, but my break is going to be work on the house and finish off the honey-do list, do sketch commissions and covers, and then just have time to breathe, because I frankly make more money living that way than I do doing interior pages, because I overrun them so much. And just have some breathing. Yeah, I feel the same way. But also I'm really excited, Zander, for whatever you're doing next. And you know, you can always call on me if anything I can do to like amplify your message, shout out the
All right.
Kickstarter, do a pin up, whatever. I am there for it.
Nice. Well, yeah. Feelings mutual, but I know that it's a little bit more one way than the other, or more useful one way.
I know you don't admire me at all, but I mean.
I love this. You guys are like brothers. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot today.
Oh, thanks so much.
Looking forward to everything that's coming next. Good luck on Historia. Good luck on finishing up Kaijumax. Good luck on your secret new project, Gene.
Yeah. Well, my thing with writers, and Xander's kind of seen this before. I told the writer that I want to work with that anything they come up with, I will just go with it because I trust them as a writer. And I had some ideas I threw, but I said, feel free to play with this or just do something totally different. But if you're passionate about it, and this is something I kind of learned working with Zander, is just like, if Zander is passionate about something, it's going to be brilliant. That's also part of the reason I wanted to bring out Heck, because before Zander did this book, and if you haven't read it, it is brilliant and funny and also heartbreaking, you know, kind of in a more poetic way than Kaijumax. But yeah, he described it to me, and I thought, wow, that is a great, Brendan Fraser mummy style adventure story. And he's like, Zander was kind of like, it's not really that. It's like, what do you mean? But you could do this with it and that with that setting. And he's like, no, it's actually, and when I finally saw it, I was like, oh hell, yeah, that is effing brilliant. That is crazy, and it's not what I imagined. And if you try to force Zander away from his brilliant idea, it's not going to be as cool as his brilliant idea. That's just all there is to it, and that's true of so many writers.
That's exactly how I feel about Kaijumax. When I before I read it, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. And while I was reading, I was like, this is pretty heavy.
This isn't fun at all.
This is heavy stuff. It's still fun.
Reemphasize, if you love Top 10, you need to read Kaijumax.
But it's true of a lot of writers, right, Zander? Like, I think that's what you were saying.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of times it's like, you know, because sometimes there's things that you can just do and just see what hits the page. And then sometimes there's stuff that you have to pitch it to somebody so that you can get, so that you can get it going. And, you have to explain the whole thing. And I think that a lot of, like, if I'd had to explain Heck from start to finish, I don't know if I would have made the same book, because a lot of it was just what hit the page,
Well,
I think that's really interesting.
what about you, Gene? Like, how much of May is what you planned out from the beginning?
Oh, I mean, it's actually pretty close to what I imagined. I mean, I haven't, it's me working with me. So I kind of just push a word. Though I should mention also, unlike Zander on Kaijumax, I actually, for fun, also brought in some guest writers. And I kind of explained the world to them and said, here's where the story starts and here's where the story needs to end plot-wise. Do you want to put something in between? And that was really exciting. So those sections did not go the way I expected.
Yeah.
There's a chapter or an issue written by Mark Waid. And I said, here's where the last issue ends, and here's where all the characters need to be by the next story. And I think you could do a story about the sister, about the main character's sister and what she's doing during this time. And he's like,
Annie.
oh, yeah, Annie. And he was like, no, I've got actually a very clever twist of what we can do with the main character. And he just, there's a thing where when I described like the geek story, the female geek stories I don't like, I said, I often said, literally in interviews, I'm never going to do a story where a cute boy comes up to me and takes her glasses off and says, oh, you're not a geek, you're beautiful. And Mark Waid's insight was, Mae is still a very, very heterosexual teenager. If a boy do that to her, what would she do? And it's kind of like, oh, well, he's right. Actually, she's a normal teenager, normal heterosexual teenager. She's gonna have a reaction. It's gonna be interesting. And he wrote that story. So in that sense, yeah, that went somewhere I never imagined a Mae story would go. Also, there's another story written by my friend Molly Jane Kramer, where
It was the model for one of your characters.
Yeah, she's the model for one of the characters. So Mae's best friend is Dahlia Jane Kramer, who's based on my friend Molly Jane Kramer.
Yeah.
Great comic geek. And I found out that, strangely enough, I had Dahlia Kramer go to Purdue.
Yeah.
And then it turned out while I was in conversation with Molly, she said, oh, I went to Purdue. And then I began describing the story I wanted to do with Dahlia Jane Kramer. And Molly was able, like, oh, yeah, I was part of that club. Oh, yeah, I went to that class. And it's got, hey, wait a minute. And as we went along, and I began pumping Molly Jane for details of her life over at Purdue, she began explaining how the story would work. And at a certain point, I just realized, okay, Molly, you just need to write the story now. Like, this is just take it. You know how the story works, just write it. And then I just translated her story into a comic book script and then drew it.
So I had Mark Waid on the show a few weeks ago. Mark calls you one of the 5 best artists he's ever worked with.
Man, he's worked with everyone. I mean, I was just at the Ringo Awards, and of course he worked with Mike Ringo, so
I asked him which 5, and he didn't answer that question. So
well, I don't have an award named after me, I'll say that.
So I don't know where you are on that list of 5, but you're on that 5.
There's a list of like probably 50 artists. I mean, sorry, other 45 guys, you're not on the list. I don't know which ones you are, but
yeah, he says it's because you think a lot about your stuff, and I think that about what you're going to put in the page and everything, and I think that came off in this interview because we're going over the Wong story and how many details you just added to Zander's script and layouts there.
My almost unique, not my unique, but one of my strong points that's unusual inside of comics is I'm able to overcrowd an image without having the over details clash with the story I'm trying to tell. And the images flow clearly from panel to panel still, and you still look at the right part of the panel to see what's important. And if you want to look at the other details to look at, like, if this the lamppost that's in Milwaukee, yes, that is a Milwaukee lamppost, you can do that. Or you can look at the Easter eggs, but it's not going to distract you from the main story. Not many people can do that.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Thank you so much, guys. This was so great. Good luck with Seriously, Xander, good luck with whatever's next.
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to know what it is too.
Me too.
Good luck with figuring that out. I feel like that's what's
All right.
next.
Yeah, all right. Good.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.